Welcome to the Inspiring Tech Leaders podcast with me, Dave Roberts. Today I'm talking about OpenAI's launch of a new model called GPT-5.4-Cyber. And it's not just another incremental upgrade. It's a strategic move in an AI arms race in cybersecurity, particularly against Anthropic's competing model Mythos. Now, to understand why this matters, we need to zoom out slightly. Over the past year, we've seen AI models evolve from general-purpose assistants into highly specialized tools, and cybersecurity has emerged as one of the most sensitive and important domains. These models are no longer just helping you write emails and summarize documents, they are now capable of identifying vulnerabilities, analyzing malware, and even reverse engineering software. That shift creates both an enormous opportunity and serious risk, because the capability that helps a defender secure a system could, in the wrong hands, be used to exploit it. So let's start with what OpenAI has actually released. GPT-5.4-Cyber is a specialized version of its latest frontier model, fine-tuned specifically for defensive cybersecurity tasks. It's designed to assist professionals in identifying software vulnerabilities, analyzing threats, and strengthening systems. But here's the key difference. Unlike standard AI models, GPT-5.4-Cyber is deliberately more permissive. In other words, it has fewer restrictions when it comes to discussing and analyzing cyber techniques. That's a significant departure from the cautious approach we've seen in mainstream AI tools. However, that access is tightly controlled. OpenAI is not releasing this model to the general public. Instead, it's been rolled out to a vetted group of cybersecurity professionals, researchers, and organizations through something called the Trusted Access for Cyber program. And this is where the strategy becomes really interesting. OpenAI is effectively saying, we'll increase capability, but only alongside increasing trust. So the more verified and credible you are as a user, the more powerful the tools you can access. This tiered access model is a deliberate attempt to balance innovation with safety. Thousands of verified defenders and hundreds of security teams are now being onboarded, with different levels unlocking different capabilities. So why is OpenAI doing this now? The answer lies in competition, specifically Anthropic. Just days before OpenAI's announcement, Anthropic revealed its own cybersecurity-focused AI model, Mythos, and Mythos immediately raised eyebrows across the industry, not just because of its capabilities, but because of what those capabilities implied. Reports suggest that Mythos is exceptionally strong at identifying and even exploiting vulnerabilities across major software systems, and that has triggered concern amongst financial institutions, regulators, and security experts. In fact, warnings have already been issued at the highest levels. There have been discussions involving major financial authorities about the potential risks of such powerful models being misused. So what we're seeing here is not just product innovation, it's a strategic response. OpenAI is positioning GPT-5.4-Cyber as the defensive counterpart to what many perceive as the more offensive capability system from Anthropic. And this highlights a fascinating divergence in strategy between the two companies. Anthropic appears to be taking a more centralized and restricted approach, limiting access to a small number of organizations. Some reports suggest as few as a dozen early partners. OpenAI, on the other hand, is scaling access more broadly, but with structured safeguards. Thousands of defenders rather than a handful of institutions. So you have two competing approaches emerging. One says restrict access tightly to minimize risk, the other says distribute capability widely amongst trusted defenders to strengthen the ecosystem. Now, if you're a technology leader, this raises an important question. Which approach is actually safer? Because there's a strong argument that concentrating power in a small number of hands creates its own risks. If only a few organizations have access to advanced cyber capabilities, that could create an imbalance in defense. On the flip side, widening access increases the surface area for potential misuse, even with vetting in place. This is not a simple trade-off, it's a fundamental question about how we manage powerful AI systems in critical domains. Let's talk about capability for a moment, because this is where things become very real. GPT-5.4-Cyber is reportedly capable of analyzing vulnerabilities, assisting with penetration testing, and even understanding complex attack chains. And importantly, it can operate with fewer guardrails when used by verified professionals. That means it can engage in deeper, more realistic security analysis than traditional AI tools. which often refuse to answer anything that looks remotely like hacking. This is a big deal for defenders, because one of the long-standing frustrations in cybersecurity has been that defensive tools often lag behind offensive capabilities. Attackers don't follow ethical guidelines, they don't have guardrails, so if defensive AI is too restricted, it becomes less useful. OpenAI is clearly trying to address that imbalance. But let's not ignore the risks. Security experts have already raised concerns about the potential for these models to be misused if access controls fail or are bypassed. The very capabilities that make them powerful for defense could be repurposed for offense. And history tells us that tools built for security can often be turned into weapons. So the question becomes, how robust are these safeguards really? OpenAI argues that its approach of iterative development and scaled trust allows it to monitor usage, learn from real-world interactions, and continuously improve safety mechanisms. And that's a very different approach from trying to solve safety entirely in advance. It's more dynamic, it's more adaptive, but it also requires a high degree of confidence in monitoring, governance, and enforcement. Now, let's zoom out again and look at what this means for the broader industry. We're entering a phase where AI is no longer just augmenting cybersecurity, it is becoming central to it. AI models are now capable of operating at a level that rivals and in some cases exceeds human experts in specific tasks. And that changes the nature of cybersecurity entirely, because instead of isolated human attackers, you could have highly capable AI systems automating and scaling attacks. At the same time, defenders can use AI to automate detection, response, and remediation. So what we're really seeing is the beginning of an AI versus AI dynamic in cybersecurity, machines defending against machines. For organizations, this means cybersecurity strategy needs to evolve rapidly. It's no longer enough to invest in traditional tools and processes. You need to understand how AI is being used on both sides of the equation. You need to think about access to these advanced models. Who in your organization can use them? Under what conditions? With what oversight? And perhaps more importantly, you need to ensure that your teams are equipped to work effectively with AI-driven tools. Because having access to a tool like GPT-5.4-Cyber is one thing, knowing how to use it responsibly and effectively is another. This is where leadership becomes critical. Technology leaders need to bridge that gap between capability and governance. They need to ensure that innovation does not outpace control, and they need to foster a culture where security is not just a technical function, but a strategic priority. Now, before we wrap up, let's reflect on what this moment represents. The release of GPT-5.4-Cyber is not just about one model, it's about a shift in how AI is developed, deployed, and governed in high-risk domains. It's about competing versions of safety and access. It's about the balance between empowering defenders and preventing misuse. And ultimately, it's about the future of cybersecurity in an AI-driven world. Because the reality is, this is just the beginning. Models will become more capable, access will expand, and the line between defense and offense will become increasingly blurred. So the question for all of us is not whether AI will transform cybersecurity, it already has. The real question is whether we can guide that transformation in a way that makes the digital world safer rather than more dangerous. And that's the challenge for every tech leader listening today. Well, that's all for this episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Inspiring Tech Leaders podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. You can find more insights, show notes, and resources at www.inspiringtechleaders.com. Head over to the social media channels. You can find Inspiring Tech Leaders on X, Instagram, Inspo, and TikTok. And let me know your thoughts on GPT 5.4-Cyber. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in tech.